My hot take is that managers need to stop over relying on training to get product managers to change how they do their jobs. So, what happens right now, what I see a lot is that product leaders will want to change how their product managers are doing their work. And the way that they do that is they send all the product managers on their team to a training. And then the product managers come back and nothing changes. And the managers go, well, what went wrong? We should send, the training wasn't very good. And it's almost never the case that the training is the problem.
Hello and welcome to another episode of One Night in Product Hot Takes Edition, where I speak to one person about one thing, get straight to the point and find out what's on their mind. Now, if you've got something on your mind and you've got your own hot take, why not go to onenightinproduct.com/hot and grab a time and we can have a chat and get your opinions out to the world. But in any case, do remember to subscribe to the podcast on your favourite podcast app or on YouTube and make sure that you never miss another episode again. Anyway, enough of me. Let's get straight to Jenny Wanger's hot take. So I see ahead of me a kind of a two-tone scene, a little bit of red, a little bit of white, some hexagons in the background if I've counted the sides right, and also a person in front of me with a beaming smile. So I'm going to throw over to you and ask you who you are, where you're based, what you do, and most importantly, what's your hot take?
Yeah, my name is Jenny Wanger. I am a consultant. I help product teams who are trying to dramatically change the way they're working and actually make it stick, instead of having it be sort of a thing that happens and then goes to the past. And I am based in Boulder, Colorado, and really thrilled to be here.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you here, and I've been to Boulder before, so I have fond memories of all the boulders, but what's your hot take?
My hot take is that managers need to stop over relying on training to get product managers to change how they do their jobs. So, what happens right now, what I see a lot is that product leaders will want to change how their product managers are doing their work. And the way that they do that is they send all the product managers on their team to a training. And then the product managers come back and nothing changes. And the managers go, well, what went wrong? We should send, the training wasn't very good. And it's almost never the case that the training is the problem.
All right, so I have questions. First of all, I understand that you do a bit of training. Obviously, I also do a bit of training. We've both got courses that we teach. Are we, or should we just stop doing those things? Or is it more on the kind of the buy side, like what you do with the training that's the problem?
I think that it's absolutely, it is, I think there are fantastic trainings out there. You're right. I do trainings. I love teaching. And I love when I get to see that transformation in my students. But what I've seen is that when it works best is if the manager and the team is actually thinking not about the training in isolation, but the training within the broader context of their company. So what they need to do is it's very rarely the problem that the product manager doesn't know what to do, right? Product managers have read the books, they listen to the podcasts, right? The fantastic,
Oh, I hope so.
One Night in Product and many others out there. And they've heard all of these amazing things to do, right? And the manager goes, well, then why aren't they doing them? They probably, maybe we need to do more training. And the answer is that the training needs to be joined within the infrastructure, within the system of their company in order to actually make that change be material within their company. So professional development can't just be, let's send you to training. It has to be training plus other things around it in order for it to be successful.
Okay, so we're talking then a lot about almost the idea of context playing a part in it, right? Like you can't go and do some random course that talks in generalities and then go back and not have any support at all. Obviously, there's also then this potential to think about, maybe consultants. But again, it just sounds like we're sitting here sort of trying to get people to buy our stuff again as well. So like, let's assume that there's someone out there, maybe even listening to this, like a product leader that's got a team that's underperforming in some fashion, or they want to develop them in some fashion. And they're sitting there thinking, well, I want them to get better in something that I personally am not good at.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like whatever it is. Like maybe I've not got any history in doing user research or something like that. And I want my team to get better at that. What should that product leader be doing in that circumstance? Like, should they just go out straight and get a consultant? Or should they do some other thing that involves training? And if so, what is that thing?
Yeah. So what they should be doing is they should be looking at the full experience of how their product managers are doing, we'll say, right, more customer research. So if you think about your product, if you use that same product mindset for your team, right, and you look at them and you say, okay, this is the desired behavior and they're not doing it. So Do they have a knowledge gap? That's the first thing to understand. The second thing to understand, is this work part of their expectations for their job, right? Are they getting evaluated on whether they're doing customer research? Is it showing up in their reviews? Is it something that you as the manager are talking about with them as something that's important? Do they have the time on their calendars for it, right? Are you looking at, are they going, once they learn a new skill, it takes time to practice it. So are they going to have the time to practice it? And then finally, are there systems in place to make it easier, right? In the case of customer research, is it easy for them to find a customer with the problem that they are trying to solve right now so that they can do the research? Is there a clear place of where they should put their interview notes so that they know what to, or is there a template for them to use for the interview notes? All of these different pieces. And so as the manager, you should be looking at all of that together. If all of those other things are the gaps, right? Asking them about customer research and talking about it, that's something, even if it's not your specialty, that you can do. If it's, those systemic things, right? You, as the manager, could look at it, you could delegate, you could ask for help, right? That might be a good place to bring the consultant in to say, I'm going to be doing this training. And then I want to also add in, we need to up our systems so that everybody can actually follow through on the training. There's a whole, but as the manager, you need to be looking end to end at the product manager experience and whether they're actually capable, whether they are set up to succeed in that.
But that sounds really complicated. And obviously managers, leaders, and obviously indeed individual contributors, they've all got work to do, right? Like none of them are sitting there with lots of time dedicated to bettering themselves, especially these days. And maybe in some companies, never in any of the days. So surely there's this kind of intoxicating attraction of sitting there saying, I can offload this to some expert that knows all about this stuff, and it's their problem. And it just then reminds me of a course I did many, many years ago, where back when I was still doing software development, and I was sent on a SQL course, like a SQL Server course, and learned all the fundamentals of SQL, many, many years ago. And, got a little certificate, and I think it was Microsoft accredited and all that stuff. And it was very exciting. And, no one in my organization above me knew how to do any of that stuff. So it was all fantastic. I came back and, to your point, never used it, and then had to teach myself SQL again a few years later. And then there's an argument, I guess, of like, well, there's no better training than the kind of school of hard knocks, having to do it, kind of courage under fire style. Like, there's something going on in your company, and necessity becomes the mother of all invention and all of that stuff. So is there a way, I mean, you've talked about, obviously, like, yeah, sure, they have to go and do the things and have the support, and hopefully in some companies to do, but is there a way that course creators or people that do the courses can at least kind of set the scene in some way, either within the course, during the course, or maybe after the course, so that they can actually make sure that the lessons that they're trying to teach do actually kind of hit home and get applied?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of different pieces, a couple of things that course creators can do, right? One thing is that within the course, making sure that as many things can be taken away and used immediately, right? So one of the things I love about Reforge, and when I was developing my course, I got a huge chance to do this too, is a lot of templates, examples, and real world use cases, so that I was able to set up my course with certain things where at the end of that session, the comments said, oh, I can start using this right now. This is a great idea and I can run with it, right? And so you can have that because the closer it is where you have the theory and the practice, the more successful it is that the course material is going to stick in somebody's head. There's also really low-key things that the company can do, right? Especially if you're sending a group to a course together. So one of the teams that attended my course, they sent a handful of people from the same company, and they actually met once a week after the course to talk about it, right? And to actually say, okay, what are the things that work for us? How does this apply? And connecting those dots, right? And increasing the connections, the ideas between what everybody was learning. And so that's another way in which you can connect this theory and practice together. And so as a course creator, also one of the things I offer is, if you want to do my course as a private training, right? If you want to do one of my programs, then I can also come in for several weeks thereafter and actually do office hours with the team, where I'm saying, okay, now let's actually, have you applied what we talked about in the course? Why or why not? let's actually work through it together, right? We can go through one of the templates, see how you filled it out, get feedback, all of those sorts of things. So there's all sorts of ways in which you can extend it and try and create more of those opportunities for context, for connecting the dots. And, eventually for enabling the team to go and fix the system, fix the broader issues of the infrastructure not allowing them to do the desired behavior.
All right, so we're talking about training tonight, so give me just a few seconds to teach you something about this episode's sponsor. Now, in my time building my consulting business, I occasionally have eureka moments, like when a certain tool becomes a legitimate game changer. That's why I'm excited to talk about Leadfeeder, a tool that helps you cut through your data and turn your website visitors into solid leads. Imagine knowing which companies are checking out your site, tracking their behavior, and integrating it all with your CRM. That's exactly what Leadfeeder does for you. Result, it becomes your secret weapon for targeted lead engagement, making it easier for you and your team to convert website traffic into sales. You can head over to leadfeeder.com/try for a free demo, get a free extended premium trial when you let the rep know that you found out about Leadfeeder through me and the One Night in Product podcast. Check the show notes for more details, but as for now, let's get straight back to the show. Now, if I were going to be a slightly more cynical man, I might sit there and say, well, that's exactly what I'd say if I was running a course and wanted people to pay me lots more money to continually get me to come back and do those off sales. And on one hand, I can sit there and appreciate that conceptually, this kind of longitudinal approach is probably quite a good idea, right? Because again, you get the benefit of doing the standard material and then you get all of the support that you have afterwards. But it could also, to some people at least, especially in this day and age with the kind of penny pinching CFOs not want to spend money on anything, could almost seem like a cash grab by the trainer, right? Like, oh yeah, here's my cheap course, but actually if you give me this amount of money, then I'll do a much better job for you. Is there a danger that it gets seen in that kind of light?
I suppose, sure, right? But the answer is that as a trainer, my goal is to make sure that it's actually effective, right? If I can't deliver, right, I don't want to deliver an output of I ran this training. I want to deliver outcomes, right? I'm a product person. And so I actually want to make sure that I've been, you had your SQL course. I've got my stories too about the 2-day training that I sat through, and it was just absolutely frustrating because here's, somebody coming up there and talking about all of these amazing things. And I say, okay, my company's never going to be able to do this stuff, and getting very frustrated. So it's actually, if you are paying money for your employees to go to this training, if they then come back and they want to apply the things and they can't, right? Or they forget the things or whatever the case may be, it's actually going to be a worse employee experience for them. You are potentially doing them damage or making them more likely to want to go to a different company because you are doing these things in an ineffective manner, right? You are just sort of trying to take the easy path and say oh, well, I'll just send them to the training and I can just write a check and call it a day, as opposed to actually saying, what is the outcome I'm trying to drive here? And how can I make sure that my employees have the experience and get the professional development they need in order for it to be more effective at my company, in order for them to stay longer, in order for us to actually deliver the outcomes for our product that we want to, right? All of these things are the actual goals. And so I don't think that I tend to think that my goals and my clients' goals in these trainings are very well aligned. And I just I get frustrated when I see my clients not able to fully take advantage of what the offerings are.
But there is an attribution problem as well. And this is a problem for a lot of things, not just training. I remember speaking to a coaching thought leader on this podcast a few months ago, because coaching, and I don't know if you do coaching as well, I certainly do. And it's something that, again, I believe is very valuable. Mentoring as well, I think, is an incredibly valuable thing for people to do. But at the same time, if people are paying for it, they kind of want to see a concrete outcome from it. Now, obviously, in the case of training, you can sit there and say, well, they now know how to do that thing and they should start doing it. But also, we're not training people to do a factory process or something. We're training people to do a creative innovation type process, which means that in some cases, and again, even notwithstanding the general kind of conditions within the company, it could be quite hard for them to do that well, certainly to start with, and maybe even over time. And then you get these, again, like maybe the bean counting CFOs or maybe even the boss of the person who did the training thinking, well, actually, did we get anything out of this? Because it's actually quite hard to do some of these things, like a strategy course or something like that. Like doing a strategy course doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden like a master of strategy, or that you can definitely generate a winning strategy. It just improves your odds. But that's not how some people see this thing. So I guess back to the attribution point, is there a way to try to, I guess, bed in this kind of, well, look, we've achieved something here, and this is the benefit that it's actually had for your business and obviously for the employees as well.
Yeah. And so I think that this is one of those things, right? Back to the question of what is the desired behavior that you're trying to encourage the product managers on your team to do, right? So if it is strategy, one would assume that there had been a gap, a gap identified where the product managers weren't doing enough to drive strategy forward for each of their products. And so there you have, it might be subjective data, but you have data suggesting that that's the issue, right? So what you need to do, right? So you invest in the training, you invest in the templates and coaching, whatever other elements are needed in order to help your team level up their strategy. And at the end of all of that, you should be able to see, yes, that they right the subjective data, right? The thing that informed it's deciding that you needed the training should be decreased, right? You should see progress on your metrics. And it might not be, it's not going to be statistically significant, but it should be there, and it should be showing up in things like performance reviews. It should be showing up in how people are actually doing. And product managers are perfectly intelligent people, and you can say to them, was that training useful? And they will be able to say yes or no, and here's why. And so that's the other final thing is just, ask them. Make it that simple.
No, absolutely. And hopefully they'll even feel confident and psychologically safe enough to give a good answer to that as well, rather than feeling that they have to give one way or the other because that's what they think their boss wants. But speaking of bosses, though, I mean, we've talked a bit about how the leaders need to make sure that they can build the stuff around the training so that the training has the best chance to bed in, take effect. But leaders need to be trained as well, right? So is this then just a separate higher order problem that they somehow need to get their bosses, whoever they are, like the CEO or some other C-suite level person within the organization, to do the same thing for them? Because obviously the higher up the tree you get, so to speak, to some extent it's almost harder to maybe make some of the changes or to have the time to do the things off the back of the training. And you either then end up with undertrained leaders, not necessarily doing a good job, and maybe that then percolates down. Or again, you kind of have this, maybe they don't, maybe they just don't have a chance to apply the stuff that they have been trained in because the environment that they're in doesn't really support this, and they're unable to kind of enforce that ability to do these things on their own. Like, how can we change? I mean, this is a big question, but like, how can we change the environment in the entire company? Like, have you seen that work where leaders in big jobs can really kind of take this stuff forward against some level of adversity?
So this is where I think there's the difference between an individual contributor and a leader, right? And if you are a product leader, then you are at the point where you are responsible for your own professional development, and you are also responsible for the company's environment. And so you need to, at that point, really be able to say, this is the training I need. Here is how I'm going to get it. Here's how I'm going to make sure I apply it. And then here is how I'm going to be the one to actually change my environment and drive things forward in order for me to be more successful. And if I can do this and make myself more successful, I bet I can also make my peers more successful. And this will be advantageous to them as well. And so I think that's really, there's a transition point at some point in your career where it's no longer your manager identifying gaps for you, but it's you now having to identify and take ownership over your own professional development to a much greater degree.
So I'll buy all of that. But another thing that occurs to me, and it occurred to me as you were talking about it earlier, is this idea of how you've kind of got this checkbox mentality in some organizations as well. Like sometimes people are maybe doing these courses or sending people on these courses way too late. They only care maybe towards the end of the year because they've got to use the budget, otherwise they don't get the budget next year. They kind of just send people on anything. And now I'm sure that people can learn anything from anything, but is there not a risk then, though, that because of this checkbox exercise, a lot of the training and a lot of the people that turn up to training, kind of thinking of the trainers themselves and like the impact that they're trying to make on the world, that a lot of the people that turn up on these things aren't going to get to do. Like, how do you, I mean, I guess I'm trying to think from the trainer's perspective, like how can trainers make peace with the fact that maybe not all of the people that are going to get to come to these things are going to get to apply it, and not feel too downbeat about that? Because, you know, we've got people that do training that listen to this as well, right?
Yeah. So I think that that I think is a different scenario, right? There, the objective is not to change how your product managers are actually building product. It is, your objective is, I need to use this budget because if I don't use it, I won't get the budget back next year. And I want to, maybe be able to do something for my product managers that is good for them, where they can learn a new skill. And even if it's not something that they're going to be able to directly use, it's good for them to get exposed to this, or to maybe, to attend a conference or whatever it might be. And it's a different outcome that you're driving for in that particular scenario. And I think as a trainer, right, your goal is to help them get to, help them learn something at a very basic level, right? And so if, even if they don't get to have the chance to apply it, or it's a different situation, you're still in a world in that case where they are able to learn something and get value from it. And so I think absolutely, as a trainer, you have to also make peace with the fact that sometimes it is just the, end of year, where can we squeeze the budget in kind of scenario. And you still owe those people just as much attention, care, and respect as you do the people who are really trying to take what you're teaching and apply it immediately and try and move their company forward.
Yeah, I guess there's this ideal of give them something, anything that opens their mind or expands their horizons just a little, and then they can do with that what they can. But at least you've kind of pointed them in the right direction. But if people want to be pointed in the right direction and maybe come and speak to you about some of your training, or just generally catch up, where can they find you after this?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is a great place to find me. I'm Jenny Wanger, Wanger. A little bit of an odd spelling there. I also, I've got a website, jennywanger.com, and I will be also, if you want to take one of my trainings, I've got a Reforge training on product operations and infrastructure that is going to be launching another cohort in mid-September, and would love to see people join me for that.
Well, there you go. Well, hopefully some product ops curious people after this will come and check you out. But obviously, as a trainer myself, as we're both trainers together and both coaches and all of these things, we could probably talk about this stuff, and probably got some war stories we can tell at the same time. But as for now, thanks for your hot take.
Thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun.